Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host,
Brett Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisory.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland. Today, I've got Zed Williamson with me. Zed, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Awesome. Good. We're if you just were watching this video, we got our long sleeve shirts on. Looks like a nice, cool day, but you have no idea. It's 95 degrees in New Orleans and 95 degrees here. They're canceling some sporting events. It's a hot one out there for us. So we're kind of not looking the part for the hot days we have. But if you could, Zed, I always like to have people tell us a little bit of lay of the land. What's made you the man you are today, and kind of the backstory to gotten you to where you've gotten today?
I think actually I'm going to tell a personal story because, so many times what we do is we take our family life and our business life as separate. And there's so many lessons that can be learned from what we will do personally if we take those things into business. So I'll say, I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I got to the philosophy and the mindset of how I approach things now. But if we go back quite some time, my wife and I were going through the process of adopting our son, and we were adopting him from Russia. And about this time of the year, in 2005, we were getting ready to go to Russia to get him. And this little storm popped up in the Gulf called Katrina, and it kind of threw things for a loop. So the trip was canceled or postponed, as they initially said. We lived in an area where the house was totally destroyed, water up to the gutters, but that wasn't a concern of ours at the time because we were just focused on our son. So we evacuated. We made sure we had a place. We rented an apartment so that we could go get him. And things just kept happening, meaning we would get a notice from the adoption agency that, look, it's not going to work out anymore because your house is damaged. Well, we've got an apartment. You got to go through the home study again. Okay, we'll do that. Rented art from the library, put, different furniture around the apartment to make it look more lived in, submitted it. That's not going to work because you used to own a home. Now you're renting. Okay, we'll buy a home. So I bought a home, did the home study again, got some furniture in there. That's not going to work because you're in a different county now. And so kept being told that this wasn't going to work. And the thing is we had already met our son, spent 2 weeks with him in July. And so there wasn't a future that existed without us getting him. That's how our mindset was. And no matter what barrier was thrown in front of us, it was inertia, it was mindset, nothing could get in our way. So we did a lot of things, resulting in basically getting official documentation from the state and the city government that there was no damage to where our house was. And we actually got through the process, and a couple weeks later brought him home on October 20th, 2005. But what I learned from that was if the why is important enough, the how, you will figure that out. Yeah. And there's so many times in business where things are annoying or a little frustrating and we get diverted, but we get diverted when we probably didn't need to. And it really built a philosophy for me that everything that we're experiencing, you, me, people listening to this, everybody on the planet, we're experiencing the perfect outcomes of our current systems. And once you get that in your head, instead of being bogged down with frustration or getting emotional about what this outcome is, just know it's the perfect one of that system. So what do we need to tweak in the system to create a different outcome? And so that's kind of where the philosophy came from.
Yeah. Well, it's how you respond, right? I mean, it's 100% of how we respond to those situations. And that, what you said reminded me of a quote I used to say early on, and we've all heard this quote, but when you know your why, anyhow is possible, right? Yeah. And I think having a clarity, so whether that's I got to get my son or I want to get this deal done at work, whatever it may be, we have to have reasons. And I like to say like at least 10 reasons why, right? Like 10 things. So when number 1, 2, and 3 doesn't work, we still got more that'll get us through the tough times. So when you hear me talk like that, what comes to mind for you?
In business, there was always passion in how I wanted to do things. And the tough times would be the universe would say, hey, look, this isn't going that well. And the easier thing would be to kind of give up.
Yeah.
I know that there was a point when I started the business, didn't take any loans. It was just a one-person organization, kind of cash flowing the business as it goes. And it was difficult. It was, let's take our kids out of private school. Asked my wife to sell the car that she liked. Those kind of things were what I saw were these painful hurdles that were almost self-proof that we're going to make this happen. Hiring people, the complexity of bringing new people into the organization and just being open to, learn what it is that we need to do to make this outcome the one we want. There was a point where the business was at this level. We had clients. We did not have enough clients. And there was a conference in San Diego, California. And so I maxed out a credit card, put myself in the hotel where I knew these people would be, sat at the bar, and worked my way into getting in front of the entire organization by the end of the conference. And that was kind of the fuel that took us to the next level. So, we say things are hard or difficult, but I think there's value in loving that stuff. The way I look at it, I used to be a cyclist when I was a teenager. I grew up in Menlo Park, California, near Silicon Valley. And people would kind of complain about going uphill. And the way I looked at it was, yeah, it's hard. But when we go uphill, we actually get to have the most fun because now we get to come back downhill. So I think all those challenges, it's shifting the belief about what they are, is that they are opportunities for something better on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just having that belief though, right? So like, do you think you were born with that? You think you've learned that over time? Like, where did you get that belief system?
Yeah, so part of it is, I was very fortunate to have a father who, he is a genius inventor guy and can always think about, what's this opportunity? He doesn't believe that there's such things as mistakes. Those are just learning opportunities. So that was very helpful. But a while ago, I went down a pretty deep rabbit hole of understanding neuroscience and human behavior. And when you think about a system and that we all are experiencing the perfect outcomes of our current system, our brain is part of our current system. And the human brain, let's say evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, is not much different today than it was 100,000 years ago. And when you start realizing that the things that are holding you back is actually part of this brain that was designed to live in a world that doesn't exist anymore, you can almost, I would say, I kind of have an algorithm or an equation to overcome mental challenges, because I know that what my brain is doing is it thinks that I'm in danger when in reality I'm not. And these are biases or heuristics like negativity bias, confirmation bias, status quo bias, omission bias, all these things that are built into how our brain works, where it thinks it's keeping us safe. In reality, it doesn't need to do that. So having a pretty good understanding of those things really helps me just analyze the situation, know that if I'm hearing these things from my brain, it's probably the 100,000-year-old brain that thinks it's a lot more dangerous than it really is.
Yeah. I always ask people how many of the fears we put in our mind actually blow up to the magnitude we put them in our mind to be. And the answer to that is zero, right? And so I'd ask you the same question, but has any of the fears you've put in your mind blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Oh, never.
Yeah.
It's
a dangerous
so funny
spot up there, isn't it?
Right. Well, no, I would say one of the challenges is helping other people kind of to wrap their head around that, because the thing that does make us different, humans compared to other mammals, is we can think into the future. But many times we're projecting a future that has all of that fear that you're talking about, when if we could take one thing from our mammal friends, imagine a deer chilling in a grass field, enjoying a light breakfast of weeds and leaves, and a predator comes up. Well, the deer freaks out, goes 1,000 miles an hour, bouncing all over the place. The predator gets tired. It's not chasing the deer anymore. So the deer goes, oh, look, grass, and just starts eating again. There's a little wisdom to that we could take, because if a human was that deer, the human would never eat grass again. It would be maybe even frustrated that the predator didn't chase them as much as they chased their friend, as funny as we can be. But there's some interest in how we approach fear for sure.
Yeah. That's a good story. A good way to look at that. So let's talk about, obviously your niche, you help, private practices, right? Mostly let's call it doctors building their private practices. But I thought when we were going to have this discussion today that so many things that make them successful can make anybody successful, right? Whether that's in a locker room or in a classroom or your business or in a wealth management firm or a law firm, whatever it may be. What are the things that you look at from building culture, like the one that you want, building the culture that you want? What are the topics and the things that you work on with people to build that perfect culture?
Yeah, that's such a powerful thing, and it's an important question. To me, the key word is behavior. Everyone has read a million books and has gone through enough exercises to know that you should have, the mission statement, the vision, and your values. Sometimes I think that stuff gets turned into checklist items. And so you come up with your values. I actually did a talk last week, a small room, about 60 people. And I asked, how many people have written values? Almost the entire room raises your hand. And I said, how many of them have integrity as your value? And all the same hands are up.
Yeah.
And it's because it's one of those like, oh, that should be good. Let's make that one of our values. Right. And it goes on a wall or goes on a piece of paper and no one ever looks at it again. I think we need to add the word behavior to that. So the way we treat culture is, what are the core behavioral values? What are the things that we can witness that make someone part of this community so that we can all go achieve something bigger than all of us? I know I probably can wear people out talking about the 100,000-year-old brain, but 100,000 years ago, if you were ostracized from your pod of humans, let's say you really weren't that good of a character and they said, we're kicking you out, it was certain death. You getting ostracized from that community, certain death. So we have these communities in our businesses. People do not want to be ostracized. They will treat it from a level of defensiveness because it feels subconsciously to them like certain death. So if we lay out this behavioral core values, which means what must I witness in your behavior that shows that you are truly part of this community, what this community cares about, there's a lot of power in that. Yeah. And we like to help create it from, what do they love in their current employees? What do they wish they never, have run into in past employees that aren't there anymore? And let's create a detailed narrative of what that witnessable behavior looks like.
Yep. Love it. So how are you doing that though? So picture a team, right? Somebody's listening to this right now on the podcast. Like, how are you delivering that or making it deliverable for them to go back to the culture? Because you can't just go in like, all right, everybody, we're going to have a great culture, and then everything changes, right? So how are we delivering on? I mean, I believe in your, the behavior, all that kind of stuff, but it's also who you surround yourself with. We call it the no asshole rule, right? Like we have no assholes here. Just you got to hire good people. That's what creates a good culture, I think. But what else are you doing besides that to build that culture?
So it's really about the implementation of, now that you've created this structure. So we'll break one down real quick. So think of that employee of yours that you wish you could duplicate over and over and over again, and you'd be able to take over the world. Think about what it is about that person that you really appreciate. And it's, what is their behavior? What are the things that you see them do that matters the most? Write that list. Now write a list of the things that you wish never existed in your business. Like you said, the assholes. Okay. So what is the behavior of an asshole? Let's define that. And then, not many podcasts about defining assholes, but that's good. We're going over new territory.
We'll start the first one.
But so if we define those things and now we write it in narrative form so that we can actually read and say, here's what it looks like and how we should behave within this organization. And then you fast forward to giving feedback to the team. Hey, John, you represented this specific core behavioral value by doing this thing you did that was witnessed. That matters to the organization because of this reason. And it matters to me as a human for this reason. That'll drive the behavior internally. And then when it comes to hiring, you read this out loud, verbatim, to every person you're going to hire. You watch their body language, and then you tell them, if any of the things I just read to you rubs you wrong in any way, just know we're not going to be a good fit for you. And you see people self-select them out. If you do things like it's really important that our value is integrity. Oh, well, yeah, I have integrity. Okay, good. They check that off. That's the
Right.
problem with the current model. You have to get into the behavior. You have to get them to agree to it. And then we can't just forget it and say it one time at the beginning of the year at all hands meeting in January, and then never say it again until the next January.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I think it's also how many times you talk about it and say it inside the culture. So if you see this sticker right here, this F greater than P, anybody that's ever listened to this podcast or been around me personally knows what it is. It's helping you achieve a future greater than your past. And that's our mission statement. And I say it a million times a week, right? In meetings, in community stuff, in talks, whatever it may be. And I think, though, I've read someplace, it's like it takes 13 times for somebody to actually, kind of hear something, but like 40 times before they actually internalize it and believe it. So I think the leader can't just be like, oh, my value is integrity. We talk about trust, respect, and humility. Tim Hammett in our firm does that all the time. And it's like, it's amazing, right? And so I think that you've got to talk about it numerous times. So would you agree with that? And if so, are you educating people on that?
Absolutely. You have to have that structure of talking about it and then even giving the leverage of why it matters, because we all have curse of knowledge, meaning a foundational understanding of something that makes us bad at communicating to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I go, hey guys, integrity is important, and that's it. Well, integrity could be defined 18 different ways by two different people. So the key is, how do we define it? And why does it matter? Because you're right. We need repetition. The level of repetition needed is related to the leverage of the why. So if I say, hey, remember this number 9876542, you might remember it. But if I say, hey, if you can say this number I'm about to give you back to me, I'll give you $1,000. And then I say 987-642, 987-642 is in your mind. And so it's that why that we're giving this information. Why are we talking about it? Why does it matter? How does it impact me today, tomorrow? How does it impact you today, tomorrow? You need that leverage to drive the actual behavior. Otherwise, it can turn into white noise.
And then you get guys like me that, my attention span takes over, and like the squirrel, I'm like, why didn't he say the number 3 in there? There's maybe 987-642, right? And so there's got to be some reason there. I don't know what it is, but there's some reason there. But so how do we reduce drama, right? It's not just, we got these values, we got this mission, and now everything's perfect, right? So there's drama in the hallways, whatever that could be, the water cooler talk. How are we addressing it as leaders? So again, that person listening to this podcast, how do they help that in their own cultures?
Yeah, drama is a big deal. If we go back to being ostracized, you could typically trace it to something there where they believe that drama is serving them in some way. And if we understand that as leaders, then we can look deeper than just what the surface symptom is. But when I think about drama, I think of assuming negative intent. Yeah. If we assume negative intent, it is drama. And so what can we do as an organization to show that we always assume positive intent? There's a scenario that I'm sure everybody is going to, if they haven't experienced this in the last 2 days, they'll experience it by the day after tomorrow. You're driving down the road and someone cuts you off. No one was harmed. There was no accident, but you have this emotional response, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this bias towards what just happened. This person cared more about them than they did about me. They put me in danger. I have this emotional response. Then I start thinking about it. I start looking at their car, and I start looking at who they are, and I start making these biased judgments about them. If you were to find out instantly that they had a child in the back seat that was in major medical, emergency, and they were getting to a hospital, your entire thought process about this unbiased event that didn't impact you anyway totally changed. And it's the difference between assuming negative intent and assuming positive intent. And so to me, it's about in the office working with that. So instead of trying to combat the drama is just surface level symptom. Yeah. What we suggest is digging into why was the intent assumed to be negative? And let's talk through that. What would assuming positive intent look like? And then I'm a fan of, profiling tools like Predictive Index, Colby. If people understand who they're dealing with and you use that as part of your culture, then you might understand why this person who's heavily detail oriented and very rule following, they're going to communicate a little bit different than someone who can just shoot from the hips and just figures it out on the fly, is super outgoing and chatty. And a lot of times it's just helping those two people understand that things are going to look different from those perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. That's solid advice. Talk about, so how do we build I would call it a bulletproof practice, right? Like what are the things that you're seeing the most successful docs in their private practice? Because again, this can go on to whatever else somebody's doing listening to this. What do you see in the no miss items, the day-to-day things they're doing to be successful in their lives?
I would say understanding root cause. And here's what happens, I think, all the time. I've done it a million times. We see a problem, there's a frustration in our business, and so we go fix it. And then we fix a different version of it a couple of weeks later. And then we fix a different version of that a couple of months later. And then we ask ourselves, why do we keep having to fix this problem? And it's because we keep just band-aiding the symptom. To me, the businesses that we see thrive the most, these private medical practices, and I think it applies to all businesses, all industries, is how do we evaluate the root cause of what's creating this thing that we don't like? And what can we change at that root level, as opposed to, you know what, we're not organized here, bring in some software. This goes slow, so bring in some automation. Those tools can be awesome, but if they are stuck on a symptom, what it does is it just spits out somewhere else as a different symptom, as opposed to going, okay, what's the root cause of what we're seeing? And I think that people who do that, who dive into that root cause, they always have a better run, healthier business. Yeah.
And are there things though, like day to day, that like there's this one habit, they do this thing, whatever that is. Are you seeing a common theme?
Yeah, I would say, the common theme is it's related to culture. You can bring everything back to culture. Unfortunately, the word culture is kind of turned into just this really broad statement that covers everything. It truly is foundational to the operation of a business. And if the culture feels dangerous, then you don't get root cause analysis, because no one wants to find a mistake that they're a part of. Yeah. So it's, to me, the daily thing is supporting trust, creating a safe spot. And I don't mean everyone be nice to each other. What I mean is we can all hash things out with no concern about what that means down the road. If we need to have a knockdown, drag out argument, and it's because two people are very passionate about something for the cause of the business, that is healthy. There's something very specific that we use here, and that is basically you have to take responsibility for your emotions and for your behaviors. I can't make you angry. As much as I try, I can't do it. You have to have a belief about what I do for you to get angry. And you really wouldn't want to give that freedom up to anybody. And so, foundationally, and something that we teach and share, is getting to that culture where you can say whatever you want. It's up to me in how I take it, right? And if we kind of support that every single day, and we're looking at that root cause of what comes up, because when a problem comes up, it's not bad or good. It just either works or doesn't work. So if we can say like, hey, you know what, this doesn't work for me. Let's dig into what created it. Now the team can go like, oh, you know what? I screwed this up. I thought this and it wasn't that. And it's not a big deal. Where there's so many organizations where people will not do that because they actually fear for what it means for them.
Yeah. I think it's got to be a learned cause over time though, doesn't it? My wife has said to me before, the kids can't make you angry. I'm like, BS. I'm like, I'm only as happy as one of the four kids and whatever they're doing, and the other one's mad, there's something. So I hear that. I 100% agree with it. But talk to, again, me or somebody else. It's like, yeah, come on, man. Like, I'm going to be pissed off if you do this thing to me. I'm not going to like it. Like, how do we not get angry?
It's not about not getting angry. It's about owning the anger, right? So if we are taking responsibility, then it's not bad to be angry. There are times we should be angry. what we do is we place the blame on the outside world, as opposed to let's understand
Yeah.
what this means, and then how can we move forward through it. That's where I think the power is. So the statement of "you can't make me angry," basically, think about it this way: it's football season starting. I'm in New Orleans. I used to live near San Francisco. So let's say the 49ers are playing the Saints. This is an unbiased event that happens to have a score at the end. If the Saints win, then people in New Orleans are happy. People in San Francisco are unhappy. And some guy in Alaska doesn't care. So the happiness or unhappiness isn't the actual thing. It was the belief about what the event meant. So if we're unhappy or angered by something, instead of us just going off the rocker and just being angry, if we understand what is the belief that's driving this anger, and is it good for me? And it might be good. Like, hey, my belief is that this person is putting the organization in danger and could hurt more people. Then yeah, let's rock and roll. Is the belief more ego driven? And it's like, my belief is I'm embarrassed when this happens. Like, okay, well, is that the best thing for us? So
Yeah.
we should all get angry. We should all be happy and sad and all those things. Emotions aren't bad. If we let the world drive us, that's where I think we're giving up that control. And the idea is, let's dive into the belief that made it happen.
Yeah. And it's really what we started with, wasn't it? I mean, I can't make you angry or whatever you said, but it's how we respond, right? It's 100% our response. And for me, it's like bad news. If I get bad news at work or something doesn't go the way I want it to go, for me, it's getting in this black journal and writing it down and taking notes and figuring a way to get out of it. But you got to have a process. And so how do you go out and build processes in your own business and in the businesses that you help build?
So it's a big question. Typically, if we're looking at a specific thing, then we're going to create a problem statement. So we're going to make a statement saying, this is what we believe to be the issue. We're going to support it with data, or we're going to support it saying we need data to confirm this. And then we like to speak what the outcome, what's the desired outcome. And then we do something a lot of people have heard about is the pre-mortem. So let's speak this specific outcome that we want, and then let's talk about how that doesn't happen. Let's come up with all the reasons why that fails, which then gives you the leading indicators to know if the process is on the right path. I think when it comes to processes, they're great. The challenge is sometimes things can be over processed, where we write this SOP and it's to the law, bullet pointed, never divert away from this approach. And that's not necessarily the healthiest thing. It depends, I guess, on the scenario. If you have a surgeon doing surgery on your spine, you want them to follow the process pretty darn close. You're not looking for a lot of innovation in that scenario. So obviously you got to have the right guidelines around the right processes. But typically we see processes are built to overcome a frustration or a symptom. And we like to think about the process should be solving a problem statement, and we should be able to speak the desired outcome, and we should be able to plan that forward or future outcomes demise so that we can understand how important it is to get it right and what steps to make sure that happens.
Yeah. What are you doing from a thinking standpoint, like thinking and dreaming, strategizing? Where are you spending and focusing time there, and how?
Yeah. This is hard. I'm a lot better, I would say, this year than I have been in the past, where I generally block a few hours of my calendar every week on a Monday. I did that Monday on purpose, just because Monday turns into it's the start of the week. I got to do, as opposed to let's just think. And then we have our leadership meetings Tuesday morning. So the purpose of Monday is to just sit back and think so that we can process ideas on Tuesday. A couple tools that we use for that, or that I use for myself, is if I started a competitor to us, what would I do to take us out? That always brings up some pretty interesting things. I love the pre-mortem concept. If there's something that I'm interested in us achieving, it feels like there's more value in spending time on what would happen to make it not be the outcome. And so there's many times where my door's closed, I got headphones in, music blaring, standing in front of a whiteboard, and I'm much more diligent on doing that every week, which I didn't used to be. And it's important. It's one of those things where I know I have a chip on my shoulder that I should be working more and I should get more stuff done. And that's probably the hardest thing for me to go, wait, this is more important long-term, because this is lifting our vision away from our feet. If we're running a race, staring at our feet, we're going to run into something. And those Mondays block time is about lifting the vision so that we are seeing those trees that are potentially in the way.
Yeah. That's solid. I wrote that down. If I started a competing firm, what would I do to knock us out? And I think that's just looking for all those weaknesses or opportunities, right? However you want to word that phrase. So I think that's solid. And for me, it's been since July of 2005 of doing that same thing, that think time every single week, hour and a half. My best ideas have come in that time frame of quietness, and it's, so I don't do the loud music because then I start thinking about other stuff, but it doesn't work for me, but it works for you, which is great.
Yep,
but I think it
does.
is powerful to slow down, right? Whether you listen to a bunch of music or you don't, you got to slow down and speed up. And I think that's a lot of people are missing that opportunity because, like I said, amazing ideas come from that. So is there any apps or anything like that you use on your phone or computer or iPad or anything like that helps your productivity or anything that you really just couldn't live without? And if not, that's okay, but just thought I'd ask the question.
This one, if people aren't familiar with it, you could get a little weirded out by it if you're not familiar with what it does. But Othership is the app that I use. It's a breathwork app. Yeah, Othership.
Okay.
It's a breathwork app. So people who are interested in meditation or holotropic breathwork, it's the latter, and it's awesome.
Explain that. What do you mean by that? What is it?
So breathwork, basically, if we go back to the brain, and I know I can geek out on this stuff, but
all right, geek it out.
Yeah, if you overwhelm your brain with oxygen, it actually puts you into a state that allows you to be a little bit more creative. You have more energy. It drops the kind of the BS, 100,000 year ago bias emotions that you're in danger. And so breath work is a type of meditation that's much more active. And that app has a large selection of different types where if you want to just do a little 3-minute exercise and get some juice for the day, or go hardcore for an hour. And, so it has all those.
Is that it? Oh, it's a little too blurry. It won't show it.
That's right. Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Got it. I will get it. I love those types of stuff. I love meditation, so I'm always looking for other stuff to meditate with. Any other things that you do? Any no-miss items that Zed does every single day that allows you to be at peak performance?
I am relentless in protecting how good my sleep is.
Okay.
So
walk us through that process, because again, that's a process, right? And it doesn't begin right when you lay down. I'm assuming that begins the morning of or hours before.
Correct. It does. Look, if my employees was in this room, they all roll their eyes at this exact statement. But going back to, we all experience the perfect outcome of our current system. Our brain tricks ourselves by saying, I didn't get a good night's sleep, or I didn't sleep that well. And we blame the sleep. We blame this thing that, no, your sleep was the perfect outcome of the system that created it. And so, the kind of the easy go-to is, I'm not consuming a single calorie within 3 hours of me going to bed. That's probably been the biggest impact. So if I'm going to bed at 10, I'm done eating at 7. Pitch dark, cold, big impact. If you're going to exercise earlier in the day for the most part. Some people can exercise late, but that can kind of mess up your sleep. Things like, if people are going to have a glass of wine or a cocktail, just know that it massively impacts your sleep. And if you get it in that hours before, it's going to have a lot less impact. But I would say those are the easiest things that anyone can just do. And besides your phone, don't scroll your phone. That's like a sleep murderer.
Get off that thing.
Yeah, people think like, oh, I need this to relax my mind and go to sleep, and you're doing the exact opposite. So to me, 2 hours before you go to bed, your face is not looking at a phone.
Yeah,
and it's the behavior. It's just all behavioral. It's hard because we want to talk ourselves into thinking that it's not hurting us, and because it's spiking some dopamine, so we're thinking it's relaxing us, and it's actually doing the exact opposite. But those things. And then also, might be a little weird one, but make sure you're breathing through your nose. I mean, it's crazy the difference between if you sleep with your mouth open and your mouth closed.
Well, a lot of people, I know some guys that they've slept with their tape on their mouth, right? So they just sleep with their breathing through their nose. I've never done it, but I've seen it. It seems like it's pretty good.
What's interesting is that the body was built to take its air in through the nose. It changes the pressure of the air. If people wake up with congestion in their nose, it's because they weren't breathing through the nose. If they breathe through the nose wouldn't be congested. It's kind of this weird scenario, but it impacts your heart rate. It impacts your heart rate variability. So it's pretty wild. I forget the guy's name, but a guy did kind of a crazy experiment where he had somebody block his nostrils, and he lived a couple of weeks only being able to breathe through his mouth, and his health just went to hell, and just everything you could measure got worse and worse and worse. But we don't think about that. We think about like, well, I mean, I don't know if my mouth is open or not, so it's just those little things. They all stack up.
Interesting. Love it. Where do our listeners find more of Zed Williamson?
They can go to zedwilliamson.com. There you'll find some resources for the type of businesses we work with, which is private medical practices, but also speaking engagements. Happy to get on stage and mess with audiences, get them thinking about different approaches to how they're approaching business. And there's information there as well.
Awesome. Well, Zed, thanks so much for being with us on the Circuit of Success, man. Really appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Thank you. Appreciate it.